Did I do that? Yeah, I did that. The talk that I'm going to give today has been kind of floating around in the background for quite a while now. Many months. And I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. The title of the talk is Meditation is, that's I-S, meditation is action. And I intend to talk about how that is the case. Because quite often people project onto it. If you're a meditator, you know that it's action. But the strength of people's perception of you and then their reflection back to you of what they think you're doing is pretty believable. You know, because you probably have intelligent friends, right? Yeah. So they look at the situation, they're not meditators, but they look at it and say, you know, what are you looking at a wall? Shouldn't you be doing this, to, anything from getting an education to getting a job to protesting this or joining this movement or that movement to deal with all the chaos that's going on in the world today. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I want to address this, especially to my students who seem to be have a lot of difficulty around, they feel a little guilty meditating when other people are out doing something that looks so meaningful. And that's the key, looks, meaning, that's with a capital L, looks meaningful, but is it? How much of what people are doing is actually to make them feel better and feel more like somebody who's doing something? Then they can say in the back of their various consciousnesses, at least I'm doing something. This is all about self-centeredness and ego. I'm not going to right and wrong. I'm just saying things are either clear or they're confused. The right and wrong is extra. So I would like to say, first of all, that I'm going to go ahead and cover a few other points here, but I would like very much to interact. We have a little over a dozen people here. Some are temple residents, other people are come from different directions. Would very much like to have, and online too, if we have some questions come in, put me on the spot about this whole thing. I have a lot to say about it, but I always talk in relationship to what people are asking about. It's when I come in here to give a talk, I don't even know what I'm going to do. This is a time when I've actually written things down. It's unusual, because there's things I want to actually, I probably will say, but if I can look over this and say, did I cover that or cover this aspect of that? So it's taken a while. Bruce Nelson, our teacher that's been teaching Dzogchen and Yogacara here on Fridays, old friend of mine from a couple hundred years ago. He and his wife Terry have been coming in to offer teachings on his understanding of that material, which has been very helpful, and it actually functions as a kind of a counterpoint to the way in which I present material. So he actually was asked a question. Does anyone remember? Was the person here who asked that question? Kind of put on the spot a little bit, and his response was very, very genuine. He came back and said about the whole state of the world and so on. What do we do? What can we do? Is that what it was like? The question to Bruce, and he said, I don't know. It's pretty good. I like that response. I don't know. That's very good. That's an open dimension. It's I don't know. And here's a person who is, quite a number of years my junior, but on the other hand has been around for a while, and he's not filling up the space with his, what is it called, erudition or air conditioning. So I'd like to encourage you, after I go along here, just think about your particular dynamic as a meditator and as someone who's maybe dealing with family and whatever, or other people, people who are more maybe politically motivated to do this or do that. Again, I say it another time, I'm probably going to say this more than once. I'm not saying anyone doing anything wrong. What I am saying is as I say here, your awareness, when you get up off the cushion here, your awareness has been getting stronger and stronger. You're seeing more and more clearly the way in which your thought patterns are rising and falling away and arising and falling away. And you become fairly, to use the fancy word, sophisticated at seeing what that is. The difficulty about that is sometimes it's very painful. Sometimes it's very irritating. Sometimes it's very, very abrasive to witness your own mind coming and going without doing what? Shutting it down or controlling it, manipulating it, meddling with it. Don't meddle with something that you haven't even inspected. And this is the issue, this is the problem with people, albeit with wonderful intentions of helping humanity and being kind. Some of them are just about looking like someone who's kind, looking like someone who's helping, someone who has a guilt situation going on they've never inspected. So then when they find themselves in this situation, that starts to resonate, and then they move away from the cushion. Again, it's not wrong, it's just they're operating out of the way they see it, which they should be. But here you are listening to me, so give me the benefit of the doubt. That's what I'm asking. And that's all you can really do is to pay attention to what's happening rather than take sides. This is what the meditation practice over a period of time will help you do. Less and less and less you'll have a tendency to take sides with anything. Because whether you know it or not, you probably don't know it, but as you sit, you are seeing more and more deeply the nature of dependent origination. The main teaching of the Buddha was not life is suffering. That's a good one. And it's an important one. But everything is dependently arisen. There isn't a single, solid, separate thing anywhere. Isn't that amazing? That you can't find any solid, separate thing that isn't dependent on everything else for its apparent separation or a consideration, identification, description, so on and so forth. So the idea here is, if you get up off the cushion, let's say prematurely, before you've really clarified your own inner passion, aggression, ignorance, before you've clarified some of that and you have an idea how that works, can't get rid of it. I'm not talking about being rid of it. You don't have to get rid of anything. Everything is already perfect. This is what the Dzogchen masters, Longchenpa and other teachers, Zen teachers also have been saying down through the centuries. There's nothing to correct. This just means you just need to see clearly what this is. If you see clearly what this is, then your understanding will go all the way to the center of the earth. You won't leave anything out anywhere. This doesn't mean you can see the center of the earth. We're using concepts here. I'm just saying that your awareness is very, very expansive and doesn't miss much and knows better than to choose sides. With any time you choose sides, picking and choosing, as it says in what? Sin Sin Ming, is a disease of the mind. It doesn't mean you shouldn't make a decision to go through a door instead of a window, but those kind of things are quite obvious. So the idea is to transcend this petty mind that's based on hope and fear. We all know it. We all have our hope and fear. We leave here, leave the zendo, leave your own meditation cushion at home, and we go out and we notice that we get triggered by different things. This is not particularly something that we should shut down on or justify. Shut down on is to ignore or possibly have aggression. Or ignore is turning away from, distracting ourselves, fastening on something else so we don't have to think about that anymore. So the mind that we're transcending is that mind that it's kind of like skimmers on the top of water. It's like there's a deep consciousness that's happening there, extremely deep and powerful. It's just endless. But we're on the surface. It's like those little bugs that go around. And these to use the word that was used in the text yesterday, these proliferate. One bumps into the other and causes another one, and then they have babies. It's like your thoughts have babies. And then because they're babies, we nurture them. And what if the baby's right? What if that thought is the correct thought? What if? Please, don't do that. Don't do it. Have a willingness. This is about integrity, and it's about confidence, not artificial confidence based on conditions. It's a confidence that understands the true nature of this world, which is not separate. That means that when you're sitting and you're having intense emotions of any kind, they're not separate from anything else. Other people are having the same thing. You do not have to get rid of that. Those who are awake, not that I sit around visiting with people like that, but the way it looks here, those who are awakened to this don't have problems with right and wrong and issues and of joining this and rejecting that. And this doesn't mean that people who, as yourselves, who hold still and sit and look clearly at something without jumping to conclusions, don't see very clearly when someone is lying or is acting insane. As you all know, if you watch the news, it's not just one person, it is a whole situation that's been going on for centuries and very intensely the last 50 or 60 years of really, really strong power manipulation situations that are pretty disgusting. What do I say? Train your mind so that you don't get sucked into the opposition of that, which is just more warfare. Very, very important. The idea of training your mind is you're training your mind so you can see through your own self-deception. And that by doing that and not doing anything with it, not particularly artificially clearing that up so you're no longer deceiving yourself. We're not talking about that. I'm not. So that if you've inspected this and looked at this, if you've made friends with this, much easier to make friends with others, whether it be your mate, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. They may not know it. They may be so tangled up in knots, in the knots in their own mind, the causes, conditions. They may have no awareness practice at all. And I would say, don't meddle with them. Respect their confusion. If you don't respect their confusion, then they're not getting any help from you at all, because you need to respect their confusion, which means don't meddle with them. Let them unwind their own situation. And one of the ways that you can help them is to be with them, look in their eyes, and open up, listen, look at them, watch them, hear them, ask questions, not interrogation, but little questions, questions meant to change them so that they'll believe like you do, which is another a topic of mine that I mentioned quite a bit. Is don't believe, don't disbelieve. Don't look away. You don't need that kind of help. But you could be with someone, watch them go through what they go through, and then if they do come to you and say, well, what do you think? I said, looks like you're having difficulty. Well, what do you think I should do? You could say, well, I don't know. What are you doing now? Well, not much. I mean, they'll try to fight with you if they can. Pick a fight. They'll find some way to shift how they feel onto you, so that they can blame you. If people blame you, let them. Don't offend yourself. If Michael here was blaming me, well, he's close enough. I'd probably just pop him one. But if he was blaming me, I'm not trying to teach you some kind of protocol for how to deal with things. But you can think about what I'm saying by this, and then understand it when you run into that situation. Someone's blaming you heavily for something. Just drop your gaze. Not like this, but just drop your gaze. And receive, and that will help you just receive the energy from them. That's all you have to do. That's the kind of generosity that is missed. Give someone your attention. So what'll happen if you get up off the cushion and, I'm using the metaphor, take your guns to town? You know, you're gonna fight. If you're going out with some kind of aggressive attitude towards the present situation in the world, whatever side it may be, you're going to fight. Please don't do that. I know there's something coming up on November 4th. Here it is, 2017. And I get too many emails, but I get some from the so-called right and some from the so-called left. I want to see what's happening. It doesn't look good. It looks like both sides, with a capital D, are all wound up in themselves about the other. Not good. It can be terrible. And of course, there are some people who really like that because they can get enough people around them that will cheer them on. And if you can get a person who manifests the very insanity that you have as a self-centered person, if you see someone out there acting out what you would like to do, but you really don't have the confidence or the blindness, maybe, silliness, to do that. So we quite often people live vicariously through some other kind of figure. You will never hear me say, believe me. You may hear me say, don't believe me, don't disbelieve me. Don't do anything with it. Benefit of the doubt is what I'm asking for. Just take a look, listen to it. Don't come to any conclusions. Conclusions are cheap. This is what a conclusion looks like to wisdom mind. You don't have to come to any conclusion about anything. I could say, what makes you think you're such a big deal? You can come to a conclusion about something that is so vast and complicated, and you're just a little tiny dot in the middle of nowhere. I'm a little bit bigger dot because I'm on a ton and I'm overweight. I'm watching you guys. So quite often when these days we have what's called engaged Buddhism, and I'm not against that, so I don't want get a bunch of bad press about that. I'm all for it. If people want to do that, then of course do that. I'm just suggesting that before you go out and march, before you go out and protest, before you go out and do anything like that, just look at the motivation to do that and make sure that you're clear enough about it that you're not going to make an enemy out of anybody. It's also dangerous because there are other people that are not doing that, and you could get hurt. I'm not going to go into that end of it, but it's difficult. And I'm not saying that something like Black Lives Matter or just all the moveon.org, and I could go on and on. But then there's the other ones on the other end, and I can't list those. But then there's the one called, Antifa, anti-fascist. I'm not saying that I'm for fascism or I'm for any kind of ism. Even Buddhism, I'm not marketing. But look closely at what all that is before you sell your consciousness into something, because when you get into that, there are very, very intelligent, logical, erudite, to use that word again, people who are very, very confused, who are in charge and sound wonderful. But if you take your unexamined craziness, and you wouldn't be in this room if you thought you were sane. You wouldn't. If you thought you were, that's what people do who are sane. People who know they are insane are trying to find wisdom. They're trying to find what is the really valuable thing. What is really valuable about being a living being? Find out who you are. Train your mind. So the engaged Buddhism, and I'm all right with some of that, but it's not about get up off the cushion and go out into the world. No, don't do anything you don't have to do, and especially don't do anything that other people are telling you to do because they want company. If they can convince enough people to do what they're doing. Be very careful about that. Don't do anything unless you have to. And don't justify anything to anybody. Don't explain to anybody. Someone is sitting and saying, what do you mean you're doing this and you're doing this, and why aren't you, be very careful about that. And when I say be careful, I'm just saying, listen to them. Validate what they say. I understand you. I see what you're saying. I can see why you would be talking that way. And if they're really after you, they'll keep coming back until they'll crowd you into some kind of a corner. So you want me to tell you what to do about that? Yeah. Well, if they're real close, like Michael is, no, cave in. I mean, give in. You're not. It's not a. We're not talking about being a weakling. We're talking about allow people their craziness. Allow them to be insane. Everything goes in circles. This is the illusion of that insanity has. It thinks it's going in a straight line, but it's extremely circular. And it goes up and down, back and forth, and mad and happy and mad and happy, on and on and on. And it's not that you have to stop doing that, because one who has realized sees even more of that happening. It's just that they're not in the middle of that circle anymore. Or if they are, they don't turn their neck around until their head falls off. You just see that you're not doing anything, and other people are going like this, like standing next to a tilt-a-whirl. So let's have some questions so that we can, I mean, I've kind of been on the surface of the thing, but take me down deeper. Bailey.
You say meditation is action. What do you mean by action?
Well, things are moving all the time, and what we're sometimes accused of, well, because people project onto someone who is spending hours and hours on a cushion looking at the wall, they project onto you that you're not doing anything. But you know different than that. I mean, you may buy into that a little bit and say, yeah, I realize this is a pretty strong target for preconceptions or presumptions, or anytime you're sitting still, holding, and people think you're turning into a vegetable, or you're being a pacifist, or you have some kind of ism going on that is avoiding the world, and you're not doing what they are doing. I know people. Or I've heard of people that were meditators that have now stopped meditating and they just work in groups to try to change things that are going on. Again, that's not incorrect, but it's very likely that your own awareness can get usurped by someone else's agenda about that, albeit based on reasonable kinds of ideas about the craziness that's going on. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but I'm saying if the awareness is really powerful, then when it's time to act, you'll act out of choicelessness and out of really intense clarity about what is happening, because you've been doing what? You've been watching things that move back and forth in your mind. If you sit and hold still, there's no sitting still to it, unless you go into some kind of meditation that tries to get you to be a good meditator, like shamatha practice. And again, I have to keep saying this to qualify it so people don't think, why is it you don't like shamatha practice anymore, Uncle Bob? I haven't said anything against that. I've practiced it for decades. I'm just saying that start with just a space, and then if you need to retreat or back up or reboot and go back into some kind of awareness practice, then don't do it as a practice to get to be something else. Then do it because you need some stability. You see it yourself. So if someone comes into the hojo and says to me, Sokuzan, I know have been doing shikantaza, or just have an open awareness watching what moves, but then I started following my breath. Well, the breath is moving. It's the idea of making an agenda about it that is difficult, or creates weak awareness. So you're in a situation where, because thought and action are not separate from each other, if you go out into the world without training the mind, what happens is the thought patterns lead everything. You lead it through, because the ego mind is afraid to do things without seeing if it's harmful or not, if it's good or not, if it's bad, or if it's going to make us look good or look bad. We're really concerned about that kind of thing. That's where pride shows up in people. They don't want to look bad to others, and they project that onto others. They think that the others are actually thinking that, or it's so hidden that they don't even know they have pride. You know what I'm talking about. So when someone doesn't know they have pride, it's going to take a while, and they may not be able to do. They may just cave and say, "I'm just going to have to. I can't do this. I can't look at my mind anymore," and they'll think up some kind of reason for not doing that. And that's valid based on causes and conditions. It just means that they're not ready to do this yet. Spiritual path isn't for them at this point, at least that particular way of functioning. But when you sit down, as you know, you've been here a year, and you've spent sometimes all day, day after day after day, sitting. You know what I'm talking about. Sit down, hold still, watch, and there's nothing but a constant three-ring circus going on all the time. You actually get to see, by not accepting, rejecting, or turning away, the three poisons, you actually get to strengthen the awareness. It's invisible, you can't see it. So when you go into any situation, you are going in without defenses, without presumptions, without armor. You're actually going in sensitive to everything. All of your nerve endings, especially the mental and emotional ones, are very open. Not easy, but you're beginning to start to be able to live as in that kind of open dimension, rather than in the kind of dimension that most people are operating in, which is paranoia about what's going to happen next. There is no next. See how I scowl when I say that? Yes. We can come back to that if you want to. Yes.
Question from Sandra, who's now in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And he immediately asked, after you announced the title, what do you mean by action? So Bailey stole that question.
Yeah.
But he has a second question. He says, or asks, off the cushion, is action just an illusion, like thinking wood turns to ash in a fire? Or even on the cushion, an illusion of action.
You know, Sandra, it's both. And I would that I could come up with some more concrete statement about it. And there are people who will. But I think you're fine in the space between those, or in the space without any polarity. It's a way of working with not two that shows up as kind of confusion or not being sure or being uncertain about things. But that uncertainty is very, very valuable. So to be able to, when you ask that question, when someone asks that question, they're in that space, or they're familiar with that kind of a space. And I would say you don't need to leave that. Nothing lasts. And if you think something is something, if you just look at it, it won't be. I know. Darn. Good question. Sandra, if you have any more, please bring them this way. Chazan.
Seems like it would be very difficult to train your mind if you're actively being persecuted.
Yes.
So it seems that some of us are in a pretty privileged position where we're not going through that. So
Yes.
we see those communities that are being marginalized.
Yes.
It seems very difficult to just watch from, because we're not going through that. So
Yes.
is there a time where you?
There's always a time. Yeah, and I'm interrupting your question, but there's a time when you may go into quote unquote the actual kind of action that other people can see you doing and can applaud. Oh, they were such heroes. They ran and saved. Be very careful of that kind of talk. I'm not saying there aren't heroes. Of course they are. All kinds of heroes. I mean, my father went to war and died at 26 years old in Germany. And he was 26. He died in 1945, right at the end of the war. Was he a hero? I don't know. I heard from his brother he did everything he could do not to go in. So I would say, if you're strengthening the seeing, the witnessing part of the mind, then that awareness starts to be out in front. You begin to, for lack of a better word, trust yourself to just not know what's going to happen. And so if you're in a situation if you're in the situation where people are getting hit or beat up, if I were there, I would probably meddle with that. I don't know that, but might not be too good for someone in my condition to do that. But when I see it, I get pretty upset about that. People being hurt by people who look like robots in black things where you can't even see their humanity. They're covered with shields, and they get to hide behind that and operate out of that. It's disturbing. But read 1984, George Orwell. Read Animal Farm. Read, since I'm saying read this little book by Timothy Snyder, On Tyranny. 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. It's about how to recognize what are the signs of that. And if you don't like really long books like this, then here's Cliff Notes. Really. Same thing. But it just takes all of his things, boils it down to a couple paragraphs. This one is called Summary of Timothy Snyder's on Tyranny. And guess who wrote it? Timothy Snyder, I think. Shoka.
There's a chapter in that book, it's the first chapter, and there's a
Yes.
study of a Yale psychologist that, well, he did a study that's related to the question that I want to ask.
Yes.
There seems to be a strong tendency for me to get pulled into the agenda of somebody who's charismatic.
Yes.
How can I relate to that?
All you have to do is witness it. If you're not witnessing it, if you're covering up, then you actually do get pulled in. Then you start to make that propaganda your own. Don't make anybody's propaganda your own. Don't even make your own propaganda your own. Don't do anything with it. Don't add, don't subtract, don't divide. Whatever's arising is exactly what you want to see. So the witnessing of it, you're already telling me by the nature of your question, you're telling me that you're watching that. But it's very uncomfortable to be doing that and have other people right next to that person saying, yeah, why don't you do this too? Why are you're going to be a monk? What is a monk? Those are one of those guys that sits around and contemplates their navel. And people have all kinds of projections about this. And those of you who are meditators know this is not about doing nothing. It's even different than it was in China or Japan. We're not taking anything away from that, but it's different now because the people who are here are not cloistered in mountaintops like they were in ancient China, where they retreat from the world and sit down and probably contemplate their navels. Or they, just work with their wisdom mind. They don't have, but you go out into a family, into a workspace, into this community, into the internet community, into the political community. It is very, very difficult. So I would say don't do that. Don't go into that area. Go into it, but don't go into it before you first unload these guns in yourself. You talk about other people unloading theirs or other people doing something with their guns. How about these guns? All you have to do is watch. When you watch anything going on you disagree with, you can feel anger, or it could come up as sadness, but some kind of intense, not to be gotten rid of. We're humans. That's how we operate. That is compassion. Feeling with is compassion. It's not feeling for.
A number of questions have come in from Sanho in Austin. He says, I get riled up about disability. What does it look like to hold my seat without letting disabled kids go unprotected?
I didn't say anything about holding your seat and letting disabled seats go unprotected. That is your mind doing that. Sanho, that's your mind. And so bring your awareness to that and then look at that situation. And, and I can't go into the particulars. What I can say is if you need to have a strong awareness and see that you're not projecting your own misunderstood or ignored psychology or passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, all of those kinds of things that come from all over the place. Our past lives, you could say, past things that happened in the fourth grade, whatever. Unless you've seen that and you understand it and you're all done fighting with it, you're all done shutting down on it, then when you go into a situation with these children, you're not coming in and taking that unresolved anger and projecting it onto the people who are mistreating the children and then start going towards that aggression, because if you do that, you won't be able to see that the reason this is happening is those people who are doing that, and here I am making up a story, they're coming out of fear. That's why they're acting so crazy. When we see people acting crazy, there's deeply buried fear and panic and paranoia on a deep level, and if it's shut off and shut off and shut off and shut off, then the cycles of the moon, or however you want to say it, eventually it's going to come around and trigger that volcano, and that volcano wants to blow up. And if it hasn't been inspected, and you have your own little earth tremors going on there, then when you go into an environment where there's a lot of chaos going on, that some people are trying to promote chaos, some people are trying to stop chaos. This is a war. I don't care how right one side is against the other. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't, that there's some good wars and some bad wars. I'm saying Wars are wars. You're fighting. This is samsara, some kind of warfare. So I would say to Sanho, further on that, just educate yourself about it. Interact with the people who are causing it by interacting. Find some way of doing that rather than join the side who are against those people. Find some way to interact with those people if it's possible. It may not be possible. Like, I've been trying to interact with our Congressman, Justin Amash, who's a Republican, who has a strange voting record. But he has not responded. And I've called, I've emailed, I've tried, but no response at all. And I would like to meet with him, and not to accuse him of anything. But that's my item. I'm not saying you should do that, and I'm not going to take my attention away from what I'm doing here in order to do that. I'll do some of that. I have some time to do that, so I'll put some energy in that direction. But that's the area, I think, that area there, because we have to do this mutually. We can't just bring ourselves away and just like the Antifa anti-fascist movement, if you look at the leader of that, you look at that, and I'm not going to analyze somebody particularly because I don't know totally, but if you look at that and then you look at the movement against that, which is not good, I get emails from them too. So it's not good. Yes.
A question from Shane out in California.
Yes.
He asks, what's the fixation we have on some level with the country, politics, laws, institutions taking a different direction?
I think it's part of it is the news is all over the place, and a lot of it is the emphasis on the very difficult, irritating spots and the attention. This fellow that supposedly got elected is just anytime things start to die down, he just generates anything. It just comes out and throws something in the air, throws anything in to keep some attention on him as somebody. It's just extreme narcissism. There's the pride is not even there. If there were pride there, he would try not to act so foolish. But he's silly, and so. The other thing I'm going to say about that before we go on is just like you were saying the other day. We were saying how Dalai Lama said there are billions of people in the world that just want to work and have their families and raise their children and maybe have some strife here and there, but are not interested in some kind of intense warfare or political stuff. So the difficulty is the people, that little group of people who are insane and are kind of running everything, because that's how they stroke their own self-centeredness. They like to be at the top. They like to be important. Just a description. They take center stage, and all the other things are happening. We get distracted just by the nature of the media. This has been going on for. Look back and see why the North Koreans are so upset. See what happened back in the early 50s to their country. And see why they're freaked out after they see what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's why they're freaked out. They don't know what else to do but make threats. I'm not justifying anything. Dalai Lama is the one who was saying that. Can you say anything more about your memory?
Not that he was diminishing, as I recall anyway, the intense warfare that erupts, but that we do have 7 billion people living in the world and who have some modicum of equanimity. Yeah, so that's, he did say that. He's, I like him. We are running out of time, but one question from William up in Grand Rapids.
Yes.
He was, asked early on. First of all, he says, Amash holds town hall meetings that the public can attend. Beth goes to yell at him sometimes. So
maybe I could go in her backpack.
And then his other question was, what does sanity look like?
Sanity is no more war. Sanity, just no fighting. No fighting here. Unload these weapons. And you have to see the weapon first. You can't do anything with this. You can't stop. You can't control this crazy mind until you see that there isn't anyone. As long as you think there's a person that can do something, this is called it's called warfare. Just like driving by the police station and see they're building this huge police station in Battle Creek where it's just, I don't know how that happens. We already have a police station, but they're building a really big kind of a fortress down there where they can store all of their tanks, I guess. I think as much as we can, we should look at the mind, look at our minds, and don't interfere with it. Let it come and go. Let it feel better. You notice how your feelings feel pretty good for a few days, and things go down. Sometimes there's a story about it. Sometimes there's no story. I think it's really good when there's no story. Then you really realize that this is your bailiwick there. You really need to work with it and look at it yourself. I'll take one more question from Lisa.
You have been talking about how when you're face to face, you can respond to someone throwing anger or
Yes.
blame at you. What do you do when you're face to face and the arguments sound really compelling and you want to join?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand. But I would say don't do it unless you have to. And that's not too much. I mean, all you have to do is. Sometimes some of my students have joined things and they don't want to ask me about it because they're afraid I might say no, which I would not say no to anyone. If somebody wanted to march or been any kind of a thing and they came and just said, I'd like to go do this, what do you think? I would say, you should do what you think you should do. Not there's nothing to live up to. This is a powerful, and it's what's really powerful is to sit and experience and watch that. That's what, like I say, I've been saying for years, way before all this happened, this recent stuff, is watch the news. You don't have to flood yourself with it all day, but pick out something to watch and just kind of see what because there's so many people watching that and looking at it. So you may have to go help out the Indians in, what's the name of that? Huh? Standing Rock, North Dakota. Yeah, they could have used some help back in the Wounded Knee. Yeah. Anyone read "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee" by D. Brown?
Yeah, that's the funny thing they talk about last week. The biggest massacre in America.
Yeah. Well, ignore the Indian massacres. And,
yes.
Yeah, and all the black people. So okay, thank you so much. Please send in any questions about this. I'm happy to address them if you have them. And again, I'd like to say I'm not against any kind of movement that's going on. I probably belong to more organizations than you do.
So we'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our chant books, and once again remind you that we do have a donation box in the hallway, so please help support financially as you can.
Penetrating to all places, so that we in every century being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiyo Sam Shi Shifu Shizon Gusa Moko Sa Moko Jahoromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
To the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 time, including the 5 wisdom Buddhas, Vairochana, Akshobhya, Amitabha, Ratnasambhava, and Holy Siddhi and their consorts, please hear us. To the Bodhisattvas, Samantabhadra, Vajrapani, Avalokiteshvara, Ratnapani, Vishvapani, and the protector, Juzo Bodhisattva, please hear us. We ask you, supplicate you all to bring down light to heal and protect all the Sangha, the students and practitioners, the family and friends of Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, its buildings, houses, rooms, and everything in the gardens and adjoining grounds from any negative energy or the dark forces. Bring down light and protect us now.